welcome to the college's Higher Education and Careers Information Evening aimed at parents and carers, although I'm sure that we've got some students in the background, maybe some future students as well. You're very welcome as well, and I hope everybody finds something of use and interest this evening. My name's Meirion Baker. I'm Assistant Principal at the college with the responsibility for student guidance and support. And a big element of that support is obviously the help that we give to students as they plan their futures after college. And that's what tonight's all about. I'm going to play just a small part in tonight's proceedings. These are going to be led, in fact, by our two higher education and careers advisors. So I'll introduce them now, and if you each say hello after your name, I think you'll appear on the screen. Liz. Hello. That's Liz Bryan, and Rachel Duff sitting next to her, in fact.
Hi.
Okay, so I should also mention, by the way, two other members of the HE and Careers team who are not joining us tonight, and that's Sarah Griffiths, who's our Work Experience Coordinator, and Simon Nicholson, who is our Oxbridge, that's Oxford and Cambridge Universities, Applications Coordinator. They're important members of the team too, but Liz and Rachel are the people that will speak to you this evening. So this information evening, it's an annual event. The format's obviously a little bit different this year, so I just want to say something about that difference. You know, in the days when we were able to pack out the hall with 300 people, we used to run this event as a 90-minute presentation, and there was the opportunity to hang back at the end to ask some questions. Having attended more webinars than I care to think about over the last year, I felt that an hour is probably the limit of most people's endurance at these sort of events. So we do aim to finish at 7:30. So it'll be an hour or thereabouts, but we did also want to build in a big opportunity for you to ask questions. So the plan is that Liz and Rachel will present you with some information for half an hour or so. We'll then have some time to respond to as many questions as we can. And you'll be able to use the Q&A function to ask questions. Feel free to start putting those questions in as soon as you wish. You'll see towards the end of the presentation some contact details for Liz and for Rachel and for me. So if the evening ends without you having had your question answered, you know, you're very, very welcome to get in touch with us directly, and we'll try to get back to you. So this event is going to focus largely on higher education, on university. That's for a few reasons. One is that the application schedule for applying to uni is a bit more imminent than for applying to other things. So students generally are encouraged to apply to university in the autumn term, October, November, in most cases. The other reason is, frankly, we get most questions about higher education, and also higher education, university is where most of our students go. By coincidence, this morning I received our annual destinations analysis report, which told us what we already knew really, which is that significantly more of our students go to university, and in fact significantly more go to very competitive universities than other sixth form colleges, or than the average sixth form college, I should say, and even more so than the average school sixth form. So that's great. And in fact, we had a record number of applicants to university last year, our highest ever. However, a significant minority of our students, 20–25% or thereabouts, do not progress to university, at least not directly, not straight away. So therefore, you're going to hear something tonight about other opportunities, about apprenticeships and other training options. And we encourage all students to consider those alongside, or in some cases instead of, applying to university. Okay, finally, because this is a more condensed version of our sort of usual event, there is some information which we would like to share ideally, but we're not able to do given the time constraint. In particular, we're going to say a little bit less about student finance arrangements than we usually would. In previous years, we've been joined for the presentation by colleagues at Untitled University, who have given a really good and useful presentation on student finance. We're going to touch on it tonight, but we are aiming to put something on at the beginning of the next academic year to give you a little bit more depth of information about that. Okay, so without further ado, I will mute myself and I will hand over to Liz and to Rachel, and I'll come back in half an hour or so, and we'll start to answer any questions that have appeared by that point.
Thank you, Meirion, and welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us this evening. As Meirion said, Rachel and I are the college's two careers advisors, and I'm just going to start off by talking to you about the factors that students should consider when they're deciding on higher education. So for students who know what they want to do, they might want to train for a particular career, a profession, then making that choice as to what they want to study at university is a pretty easy thing to do. However, for other students who come in, they say they don't have any ideas, they're struggling to think about what they might want to do with an English degree or a history degree, I always say to them, please don't worry. The most important thing that they need to think about is what they're going to engage with, what they're going to be enthusiastic about, not specifically what job or career they're going to do after that particular degree. Because 70% of graduate opportunities are actually open to a graduate of any discipline. And what employers are looking for are students, graduates who can come in with those high-level thinking skills and also with some commercial awareness from activities and work experience that they may have done whilst they've been at university. So some students might actually decide to do a single honours degree. They might decide to develop and further their passion or enthusiasm for history or English literature, for example. And for others, they might want to continue to study 2 subjects equally. They might choose to do a combined honours degree. And I've had a student in today who has decided that she wants to go off and study Spanish and maths, which will mean a 50% Spanish, 50% maths, and she's going to have a year at a Spanish university where she's actually going to be taught maths in Spanish, which sounds quite complicated to me. Other students might choose to do something like an interdisciplinary degree. For example, they might want to study something like international business with finance, accounting, and economics. So they want to study a broad range of modules within a specific subject area. And some students who know that they're interested in research, they want to have the opportunity to take part in research working alongside academics, then they might choose to do a 4-year integrated master's where the last year of their course is spent on a research project. We always suggest to students, particularly to those who are studying vocational courses, business, engineering, science-based courses, that they consider taking a course with a sandwich year, or which means that they spend a year in industry, and that year in industry is often paid, or to actually take advantage of a placement whilst they're at university. And that placement could take part over a semester, it could take place over the summer. But that's really important for graduate employment. Some students decide that they might want to spend a year abroad. Obviously, that's going to happen particularly for students who are studying languages, but the majority of courses and universities will also offer that option to students. Again, it could be a year or it could be for a semester. There are foundation years, and foundation years operate in different ways. For students who may not have the entry requirements to step directly onto a 3-year undergraduate course, then a foundation year may offer students a stepped approach where they can gain those underpinning skills and knowledge that's allow them to feel more confident when they move on to an undergraduate degree. And there's also foundation years. We do have some students who they may have started off studying arts-based humanities subjects, and then they decide, actually, I'm really interested in doing something with science. So they might decide to go off and do a year 0 or a foundation year in science, which will then allow them to move on to a science-based course. So there really is something for everyone. And our job as careers advisors is to work with students who come in really worrying and saying, I have no ideas what I want to study. And we can help to advise and guide them, generate some ideas around the subjects that they're thinking of studying, or maybe even help them to decide, based on their extracurricular interests. I had a student who enjoyed English, but his passion was actually creative writing. He'd actually published a few short stories, he'd written lots of poems, and he didn't realise that you could actually do degrees at university in creative writing. So our job is to really try and reassure students, but help them to sort of navigate what initially for some can seem like a huge task. These are factors that students need to consider. We do have students that come to see us each year who want to get information on studying abroad. And this year, I think both Rachel and myself have had students who want to study in America. They might want to go and study in Holland, where tuition fees are much cheaper. However, it is about finding out how they're going to fund those studies, particularly if they want to go to America, Australia, Canada, etc. And I would say that a really good option is to choose to study in the UK, but take advantage of that opportunity to actually spend a year abroad, because universities really are global universities, and a lot of them, Nottingham, for example, have campuses in China and Malaysia. So that's just something for students to think about as an option to going abroad for a full 3 years. Some students know that they want the city life. They might want to be in a big city like Manchester or Liverpool, where they can take advantage of everything that a big city offers. However, some students might feel more comfortable on a campus university that's a greenfield campus, a rural campus, where lots of the activities in their student life takes place on the campus. And they might not mind that it might take them half an hour to catch a bus or a train to the nearest city. So they need to think not just about what course they want to study, but also the type of environment and experience that they want during those 3 years. I've mentioned the importance of ensuring that they take advantage of the internships and the placements that universities offer them. And that's essential in order to be competitive in the graduate job market. So when they're looking at course pages, there will be information on there as to what employers each university and course are actually working with, what employers they get into college, what sponsorship they've got with employers. And universities are using and involving employers now in the design of courses as well. Oxford, Cambridge, Durham, Warwick, York, for example, they operate what we call collegiate universities, where students can apply to join a particular college, and the activities, social activities, etc., revolve around that particular college, and students spend the 3 years with the same people in that college. So some students might want to look at that as an experience that they're interested in. We have massive universities. Manchester again have 45,000 students. That might suit students who want to sit at the back of a lecture hall, whereas other students may want what we would call a more personalised experience, where they know that they've got easy contact with a lecturer, and that could be somewhere like Lancaster, 12,000 students, or an even smaller university like Leeds Trinity, where they've got 3,000 students. So the experience there would not be dissimilar to the experience that they've had at QE, where we've got 2,000 students. Essential for students that are studying science courses, technology courses, engineering courses, that they do check what facilities the universities have invested in. Are their labs up to date? Is the equipment up to date? Is it modern? For those that are applying to study health-related courses, what's in their clinical simulation suites? Have they got all the up-to-date equipment that they need, whilst they're studying on their course? When we were able to take students to open days, one of the first things they'd do before actually going to listen to a subject talk was always to look at the quality of the accommodation. So that is an important factor for students. Again, it's going to be cheaper if they share accommodation, they share bathroom facilities, other than having en-suite facilities. And obviously the cost for accommodation is going to differ from university to university. And for students who decide to study in London, obviously the cost of living and the cost of accommodation is considerably higher. One of the most important things is that students check what the entry grades are for the universities that they're applying to. Do they match their predicted Ucas grades? And we would also always say to students, make sure that you have a spread of grades. They can apply to 5 courses, and we have a web-based tool that we use in progress tutorials with students called Unifrog, that can help them to generate a list of universities, a list of courses based on their predicted grades, and that will give them some aspirational courses to look at, some solid choices, but also it will advise them to have like a safe option as well, so that we need to ensure that students are going to get offers. We wouldn't want them to put all of their application in for 3A grades. You know, we need them to have a spread of grades. Some students can't wait to get as far away from home as possible, and it's always interesting when we look at our own destination report. Some have gone as far north as Aberdeen and as far south as Southampton, whereas others feel much more comfortable knowing that they can get back home on weekends, or if they feel that they want to come back home more often, and they choose maybe to stay in the northeast or within sort of a 2.5, 3 hour commute, and that's absolutely fine. We do have students who perhaps don't feel quite ready to make that jump, you know, from home to living away, and they might choose to commute from somewhere like Teesside University or Northumbria. And we're lucky really, because we do have very, very good local universities. Some things that you might want to consider are the teaching quality. Universities are measured now on their teaching quality, their student feedback, the research quality, and lots of universities have opted in to what we call a TEF, a Teaching and Excellence Framework, which measures student satisfaction, the research completion on courses, how many students have dropped out, how many students have completed their course. So that might be important. Obviously, we've got our research-led universities, our 24 Russell Group universities, and I think we had about nearly 200 students that were successful in applying to those research-led, research-intensive universities. And so for students who are keen to get involved in research, lots of the courses are designed, lots of the optional modules on courses are designed around the academics research interests. So it might be interesting to have a look at what research particular universities are involved with. I was having a look at Sheffield yesterday, and it was interesting to see that they've just discovered an arthritis drug that's actually going to help treat blood cancers. So important to see what the optional modules are, because they're the ones that have been designed based a lot around the academics research interests. Staff-student ratio might be important to students. Again, you can look at that on the course pages. You can also look at how competitive a course is, because it will give you information on how many applicants there are per place. So again, that allows students to have a strategic approach, perhaps if they're applying for 5 competitive universities and courses. Some of our students, your sons or daughters, might be studying subjects in college that are assessed through coursework, continuous assessments and project work. And it's interesting to see that some degree courses now actually don't involve students sitting any exams. So again, students might need to play to their strengths when they're looking at how their degree course is assessed. The majority of them will have a mix of formal exams and other forms of assessment. When we work with students, we tell them to look at the careers link on the course pages. It's important to give them an idea as to the sorts of graduate jobs that students have moved on to following their degree, and that information is available, and universities have to provide that 6 months after graduation as well. And I've mentioned research quality, teaching quality. There's lots of league tables where you can check out the reputation of universities, and you know what they've actually been measured on. So that might be a factor that students want to consider too. But I would say that all universities take part in research, and that different universities deliver and have outcomes for different courses as well. So it's really about choosing the course that best suits the student. We've just had our recent High Flyers survey, where again it states that graduates with little or no work experience, it's unlikely that they're going to have a chance of receiving a job offer. And more universities are providing placements as part of their degree. And some students who have taken a year placement, they often graduate secure in the knowledge that they've been offered a job from that placement. And graduate employers tell us that they find it's actually a more reliable way of recruiting, because you know, the students that have been on a year in industry with them or on a placement, they've actually proven their abilities. So they're finding that it's actually quite a good way to recruit. So the most important thing when we've had an initial chat with students is to get them to do some enhanced research. It's a little bit like buying a car. You wouldn't drive it without test driving it, researching how well it performs, etc., etc. And that's exactly the same when making a decision about which universities to choose and which courses they want to study. So we always say drill down into the course pages, have a look at the modules, have a look at what's on offer, have a look at the pathways that you might be able to split off into. What are the specific features of the course? So all that information is available on Ucas, on the university website, but also on the social networking pages. They provide lots and lots of videos of students talking about their course, their experience of the course, but also we've been advising students to watch virtual presentations from universities, book onto virtual open days, and actually some campuses are now starting to open up. So visiting virtually is a great idea because it can give you a tour of the campus, a tour of the accommodation. They've had the opportunity to watch subject-specific talks, but I think nothing beats actually being there in person. So hopefully as things improve, before students actually start university next year, they will have been able to visit the universities that they're intending on applying to or studying at. Loads of league tables out there where you can look and see which universities do which course well. And we do use league tables when we're working with students. And first of all, it looks at the entry requirements, it'll look at student satisfaction, it'll look at the teaching quality, the research quality, and then the graduate prospects. As you might imagine, obviously Oxford, Cambridge, Durham, LSE, some of the Russell Group universities will always be at the top of these league tables. But again, you know, not everybody can apply to Oxford and Cambridge or potentially a Russell Group university. And that doesn't mean that the other universities aren't a good option for students. I've also mentioned Unifrog, which is the web-based tool that we use to help students to make appropriate choices. So our mantra when we're working with students is there's no best university, there's no one individual good university. So just because your best friend says it's a good university or you think it's somewhere where you need to apply to because it's the only university that's going to get you a good graduate job, that's actually not true. We've spent some time looking at graduate recruitment and what graduate recruiters look for. And yes, a lot of them will go to the Russell Group universities and recruit from there. However, a large number of graduate recruiters have said it's much more about the individual and what they can bring, what they can offer to a specific role as opposed to the university that they've attended. So we always say, you know, the best university is the one that best suits a student's individual needs based on the factors that I've actually mentioned above. Thank you.
Thanks, Liz. Right, okay, I'm going to briefly go over student finance. I am not going to go into a huge amount of detail about this because it can get quite complex. Just to give you an overview, so universities charge for their courses, so that's their tuition fees. They can charge up to £9,250 per year for these undergraduate degree courses. That's the maximum that they can charge. Not all universities do, but the majority now are charging that maximum amount. The government have announced that they've frozen them, so they can't increase any further. And each university has information on how much they are charging on their websites. So whichever university that the student is thinking about, go onto the website, have a look at how much they are going to charge. Eligible students can all take out a tuition fee loan for this. So they don't have to pay the cost themselves. they can take out a government loan and that will cover the tuition fee for them. So that's the cost of the course. The students also need some finance to help them with their living costs. So this is their maintenance loan. So again, this is a government loan to support students. This is paid directly to the students into their bank accounts. So they do have to manage that money. They can't just spend it in the first week. It does need to last them for the whole year. It's paid in 3 instalments. So that goes straight into their bank account, like I said, and that is for the year. The tuition fee, in comparison, that loan is paid directly to the university. So they don't have to worry about paying the university for their course fees. That is all done through student finance and the university. The maintenance loans are partially means tested. So the minimum a student could receive is £3,516. After this, it's decided on a sliding scale depending on your household income. And I've given the figures below. So if your household income is 25,000 or less, it then depends on the factors of where they're going to university. So if they're living at home, so if they want to study at Teesside and they want to stay at home with you, the maximum they can get is 7,987. If they want to go off to London to study, because there's higher living fees, living costs, they can access up to 12,382 for that. If your household income is above the higher threshold, so that's 70,000, you are only eligible for the lower amount. So if they are at home, that's 3,516, and the maximum at London would be 6,166. This is because the government would expect that they would have financial support in other places. Additional funding. Again, I'm not going to cover this in massive detail because there is a huge amount of additional funding available to students, and this is dependent on their personal circumstances. So if there are any barriers to learning, if they are a carer, if they have some health conditions, if there's some sort of barrier that they've experienced to learning, they may be eligible for some government funding. All that information is on the government sites, so it's worth having a look if you feel that you might be eligible for that. Any students that are interested in the NHS careers, so nursing, occupational health, radiography, there is now a £5,000 training grant per year that they are eligible for. They apply for that in the summer, and that's a grant that they don't have to pay back. They've done this because the students have to do a vast amount of placements. So the idea is that it will help them with their travel costs and living costs around those placements. There is also a number of scholarships, grants and bursaries that each university offer on a yearly basis. Now, these are offered for a variety of reasons. It could be academic achievement, it could be sporting, it could be if you're from a low household income. If you go on each individual university website, they will have the information on there about the financial benefits that you have for going to that university. It's always worth looking, even if you think you might not be eligible, have a look because you might be surprised at the money that they're able to provide and support for students. So loan repayment. So obviously it's a lot of money that students get in loan form for their university. It's completely different to commercial credit. It doesn't affect them in any way really. How much you pay depends on your income. So they don't have to pay anything back until they've finished education. So until they officially graduate, they don't have to pay anything back. They are only eligible to start paying it back once they're earning over £25,000 per year. And even then, it's only 9% of anything over that £25,000. So it's very small amounts that they'll be paying back. These are designed to be affordable, and it's not supposed to be impact on their living costs. If the student has a larger debt, so if they have done a 4 or 5 year degree, so they've borrowed more money, that doesn't make any difference to the repayments. It's exactly the same. It's just done on the income at the end. any outstanding debt is written off after 30 years, so it's just cleared. And like I said, it doesn't impact on things like if they want a mortgage, if they want to go and get a car loan, it doesn't come up in the kind of credit checks or anything like that. And it is repaid through the tax system, so it will come off their salary as they get paid monthly. This is just an example of what it might look like. You click on, yeah. So if the student is earning £30,000, like I said, it's 9% of anything over that £25,000 threshold. So for this student, they would get 9% of £5,000. So that monthly repayment works out about £37.50. So like I said, it's supposed to be a manageable amount of money that they wouldn't necessarily notice coming out of their income each month. And to summarise, you don't have to pay anything until you've finished education. So the theory is that everyone can afford to study. All full-time eligible students can apply for a maintenance loan to help with living costs. And I should specify that the eligible students, the only time it's become a bit of an issue is normally around sort of residency issues. The majority of students are eligible. And repayments are based on what you earn and not what you owe. So it's whatever you earn over that £25,000, not how much debt you have. And that is student finance.
Thank you, Rachel. I'm just going to whiz through how we support students with their higher education applications, because I'm aware of the time and you're going to want to ask some questions. So if you're familiar with this, I apologise. All applicants submit a single application through the University College Admissions Service through the online apply system. For Oxford, Cambridge medics, vets and dentists, they have an early deadline of the 15th of October. And if you have a son or daughter who wants to apply to a music conservatoire, then their deadline is the 1st of October. But all students will receive targeted ongoing support through their progress tutors, but also from Rachel and I, particularly when they're writing their personal statement for their applications. So we've been advising and supporting students virtually, as have their progress tutors throughout the past year. And from the first term when they started with us at QE, they've had a virtual tutorial programme which has covered all of their options, including HE, apprenticeships, and we have a work experience coordinator, Sarah, who's signposted and got students to sign up to some amazing virtual work experience opportunities. So throughout that whole time, they've been able to engage with virtual encounters with universities and employers. Last week and this week, we've had our HE Careers Fortnight. Normally that would be held in-house over 3 afternoons, where we invite a range of universities, employers, etc., to speak to students about what to study in HE. So we've provided this for students virtually through our home careers page, and we hope that students have engaged with some of those talks and some of that information. And our work experience week, we already know that quite a few students have signed up to some virtual work experience, but we also have students who have managed to organise some face-to-face work experience as well. So that takes place the last week of term. So obviously we expect students to have a bit of a break, but we would like them to continue with individual research. I've already mentioned signing up to virtual university visits. And what is really important for students who are going to apply to Oxford and Cambridge, that they undertake what we call supercurricular activities, wider reading. And for students applying for medicine, veterinary, dentistry, they need to ensure that they've had some sort of work-related volunteering experience, even if that is virtual. Students will have early admissions tests to take, particularly those for medicine. They can register already for the University Clinical Aptitude Test and the Biomedical Admissions Test. Registration for that will open shortly. I work with all the students who are applying for medicine, veterinary, dentistry, so we have a Google Classroom where we alert them to all of this information. When we get back after the summer, students will continue to work with their progress tutors on researching their options, advice, support for writing personal statements. Simon Nicholson, who's our Oxbridge coordinator, he's already been working with potential Oxbridge students, as have I with students who are prospective applicants to medicine, veterinary and dentistry. We agreed deadlines with students so that we can manage the flow of applications, so progress tutors will work with each student to find out what they're applying for and where, and then agree an individual deadline. And Rachel and I will also offer Ucas drop-in sessions where we give help and support with personal statements, and we'll remind students as to when they might need to register for the biomedical admissions test. These deadline dates, important dates, you will have had on your progression information leaflet. I've mentioned October. We do have an internal deadline for HE applications. That's because last year we had over 800, each year we have 700 students apply, and we need to be able to manage the flow of applications, and they also go through a rigorous quality checking process so that we ensure that applications are as good as they possibly can be. The final deadline for universities to receive applications is normally the 15th of January, but due to current circumstances and what's been happening with students, Ucas have extended that to the 26th of January. Once students have sent their applications off, they need to monitor the progress of those applications through what's called the track section of the Ucas website. Some students will be sitting additional tests, particularly those that are applying for Oxford and Cambridge. I've mentioned the medical tests that they are going to have to sit. And obviously they need to keep an eye out on track so that they're aware of the interview dates that they may be called for auditions, for performing arts courses, or interviews for vocational courses like nursing, teaching, etc., etc. So it's exciting when students have sent off their application. The next day they come in and say that they've had an offer already, which is great. But depending on where they've applied to and whether they've applied to a course that requires an interview, these responses will vary. We've only just had our responses really last month for medicine. Somewhere like Durham operate what's called a gathered field, and they won't start to send out any of their offers until after the January deadline. And students make their firm and insurance choices. They decide which university they would like to go to. We usually advise them that probably important to have a backup plan, and they have to make their choices from May onwards. So that's just a quick whip through of how we actually support students through the process. There is a useful guide for parents. It's the Ucas Advice for Parents and Guardians, and that's been produced by Ucas. So if you wanted to find out a little bit more about the application process, then it might be an idea to have a look on there. Thank you.
Okay, so the last section is understanding apprenticeships. So again, I'm just going to give a brief overview of apprenticeships. So for those of you that aren't familiar, they combine on-the-job training with classroom learning. You're working towards the qualifications. All apprenticeships are full-time, but their structure can change slightly. So they might work 4 days in an office with 1 day release. They might do a block release, so they might go to a college or a training provider for a week. Or they may build study time into their working week. It just depends on the employer. There are a huge range of apprenticeships available now. However, there is some limitations on location. So for example, if a student would like to do an apprenticeship in film and TV production, that is available, that is an apprenticeship that exists. However, in our local area, we just don't have the production companies to offer that as an option. So some apprenticeships are location based. There are a few different types of apprenticeships. So there's level 2 and level 3. Level 2 is intermediate, which is GCSE level, and level 3 is advanced, which is equivalent to A levels. You can potentially progress to higher qualifications with these apprenticeships. They generally are the ones you see the most, so the level 2 and the level 3. The national apprenticeship wage for these is £4.30. That does increase with age and with experience. And most vacancies can be found on the gov.uk website. So if students are interested in an apprenticeship, make sure you have a look on the Apprenticeship Gov website and get registered as well. So you can set up email notifications so that it will tell you when vacancies come up. These are higher in degree apprenticeships, so these are less common, but they are increasing. So a higher apprenticeship is a level 4, so that's equivalent to HND foundation degree level. And there is also degree apprenticeships, so they're level 6 or equivalent to a degree. Generally speaking, they have a higher starting salary because it's a higher qualification. The big plus about these is that your course costs are paid, so the student doesn't have to pay for tuition fees, the employer will cover those, and they will also get a salary, so they don't have to take out a maintenance loan. So from a financial point of view, they are an excellent opportunity. Entry requirements do vary, but good A levels required in relevant subjects are beneficial. The only time we generally see a vacancy where they are requiring specific A levels is possibly science and engineering. They may ask for a science A level or maths, so just to be aware of those. They can take up to 6 years because they are qualifying for a degree. And they are very, very, very competitive. So work experience is crucial for this. If students want to go down the apprenticeship route, they need to be looking at lots of work experience that they can get in a relevant area that's going to be useful to the apprenticeship. If they don't have that, they'll be very unlikely to be successful at application level. Like I said in the previous slide, not all sectors are available in our area, but common sectors that we have are digital, engineering, business, finance, construction and science. These are just a couple of examples. I'm not going to go into many detail. So we've got a law degree apprenticeship, so the student would actually achieve their law degree through that apprenticeship. The starting salary was 17,000, which is really good. And they didn't specify any particular A levels, they just asked for A, B, B. Like I said, they are competitive, so there was a rigorous process to get onto this programme. So an online application, assessment centre, group and written exercises, a work experience section, and then an interview. So like I said, it's not an easy option, unfortunately. The other one is the higher apprenticeship, so that was with Newcastle Building Society. Slightly lower starting salary, so 16,000, and they did want an IT related subject at level 3, but equally quite a rigorous process to get onto that programme as well. The application process, so companies recruit at different points in the year. Larger companies who have this longer application process tend to start in September, October time. So if any students are interested in specific companies, so places like GlaxoSmithKline, the NHS, and if you're looking for these degree level apprenticeships, you need to be looking at their websites now really to see when their recruitment window opens, because it can start as early as September. Other companies, smaller companies, will recruit sort of in the summer months as well. The best thing to do is use a range of websites. I've mentioned the Gov website. Liz has mentioned Unifrog, our online platform. There's also All About School Leavers. We will make all of the websites available to students so that they're aware of how and where to find apprenticeships. Most companies ask for an online application form, but smaller companies do still ask for a CV. So again, if students are looking for apprenticeships, make sure they've got a CV ready to go. And I've already mentioned that work experience and volunteering, essential if you want to go down the apprenticeship route, and use your network of contacts. If you know people who work in the industry that you want to go into, use them. Don't be embarrassed to ask if you can go and do work experience or volunteering, or if they've got apprenticeship opportunities. It's one of the most common ways that people get apprenticeships. Support for students, so how do we support them? We send out a bulletin weekly which has vacancies that we're aware of on, and we also have an apprenticeship Google Classroom, so we put vacancies on there regularly. We also have Sarah, as Liz mentioned, who can help with work experience, careers appointments with me and Liz, and we can support any student who is interested in the apprenticeship route. We can help and support with completing job applications, interview practice. We will help as much as they need to, basically. And that is the end of the presentation. So that's our contact details there in case anyone, I'll leave it up for a couple of minutes just in case anyone wants to make a note of those.
Thank you very much, Rachel and Liz. And by the way, just on that last point, this has been recorded, and we are going to share the recording with you all and anyone else who registered. So you will have a chance to see any of the details there that you may have missed, including those contact details. So the idea now, we've got a little bit of time left, and the idea is that we'll use that time just to answer any questions that might come in. We've had a few come in during the presentation, and I'll go through those. A couple emailed to us over the last few days as well, which we can maybe get to. But if there's anything, as we're answering those questions, if there's anything you want to ask yourselves now, please do use that Q&A function at the bottom. So I'm going to start with a question which is about our support for students, or how we share information with students. I think Liz and Alice sort of touched on this. Sorry, Liz and Rachel touched on this as they were talking through the Ucas process. The short answer is yes, we run a series of tutorials, 2 tutorials a week now that those are back and live in college. We've just had 2 weeks where students have received some fairly in-depth information on progression. And before that, during this sort of period of virtual tutorials, students through Google Classroom were given a set of information each week through the so-called moving on document. I don't know, Liz or Rachel, do you want to just touch a little bit more on any of the details of that tutorial program? Anything else?
I mean, each week throughout lockdown, we've sent, as Meirion mentioned, what's called a moving on document, and we geared that to not just students who were thinking of applying to university, but also to students who were thinking of applying for an apprenticeship. And on the moving on document was a range of resources and up-to-date information, as Rachel mentioned, about where to find vacancies, what they can do to develop themselves, their employability skills, and also how to start some research tasks around options post-QE. So we've had a gentle flow of information, and that's actually been each week. And throughout that flow of information, if they've had any queries about what they've been provided with, then they've been able to contact their progress tutor or to contact Rachel and myself. We've been available the whole time for phone interviews or virtual interviews. And as I say, we're now back doing face-to-face interviews. And we also have our college intranet, Google Classrooms, to post information, and our twice weekly bulletin, where we've posted every single activity around progression and work experience.
Okay, thank you. So a couple of questions about studying abroad. One specifically about studying abroad as part of your degree and the impact of Brexit on that. So I'll just start with that one quickly. The Erasmus scheme, which enables students to study in European universities, has ended as a result of Brexit, but the government has introduced a replacement scheme called the Turing scheme. About £100 million worth of funding is going into that, and that will enable about 40,000 students, it's planned, a year to study abroad. Whether it will be an adequate replacement for Erasmus, maybe it will be better, who knows, but it will be there, and that will provide global opportunities for students studying abroad. We've also got a question on studying abroad as a full degree course, presumably. Rachel or Liz, do either of you want to say something about help for applying to foreign university?
Yeah, I mean, if students, normally if they want information on studying abroad, they come to see us. It depends what country they want to study in. Is their course, depending on what country they want to study in, is it taught in English? Some students don't realise that some of their courses aren't actually taught in English. The application process can be very complicated, so they need to start early. So it's not just about how they actually apply to that particular university in that particular country. It's also about finding out how they're going to actually finance their studies. A really good website to use is the Fulbright Commission, And also you can contact a gentleman who runs a company called A Star Future, and he will give, he's an expert on advising and helping students apply to study abroad. And if you ask the student to either pop in and see Rachel or myself, we can give her his contact details.
Thanks. A question about accessing Uniprog. In fact, there are a couple of questions here about what parents as opposed to students can actually access in terms of information. As far as parents accessing Uniprog is concerned, I'm afraid that the answer is no, in the sense that we enroll students, the way that the software works is that students who are on our roll are registered for Uniprog. Can you correct me or confirm, Rachel? Or
So technically, we do just enrol the students onto Uniprog. What we can do is, if a parent would like access to Uniprog, we can ask them to create you a special code as a parent to access the Uniprog system. So we can do that, it's just on an individual basis.
Okay, thank you. I hope that answers your question. And one, I notice, can parents access or view the apprenticeship vacancy list?
Yes.
To that myself? Yes is the answer, Liz.
Yes.
Well,
you can access any vacancies that are advertised on the gov.uk website. If you just Google find an apprenticeship, then you can spend as much time as you want searching on vacancies. The Ucas website also has a really big section now on career finder / apprenticeships. So if you just Google again Ucas apprenticeship finder, you'll be able to look at what apprenticeships are being advertised nationwide on there as well. So there too. Also another one called Amazing Apprenticeships, that will actually give you a vacancy snapshot as to which companies are advertising at a specific time. So Amazing Apprenticeships, the Ucas Apprenticeship Finder and the gov.uk website, they're good starting points.
Okay, a very pertinent question about the impact of COVID. Do you envisage higher competition for university places due to the disruption of COVID? I mean, absolutely in our minds. I'm the parent of a year 12 student, and it's very difficult to know exactly what the impact of COVID will be on all sorts of things with the next cohort of students. I did mention that last year we had record applications and record success, actually students progressing to university. So it certainly last year didn't stop people moving on to university. I mean, again, I'll defer to the experts here. Liz or Rachel, do you have a sense of whether there'll be more competition?
No, I don't think so. No, definitely not.
I think the universities are actually better prepared this year as well. Last year, I think it was a bit of a shock, but this year, the feedback has been that they're quite well prepared for it.
So universities, it is a buyer's market really for students. Universities need to recruit. They, like everyone else, have suffered during COVID and need students in to recoup the losses. And I would have thought that certainly for some universities it might actually be a really good year to be applying with opportunities that there may not be in the future. The very competitive universities, as always, a slightly different story. Perhaps you might see some stiff competition there, but students don't forget, universities rather don't forget, have also lost to some extent the foreign student market, which creates some opportunities for home students as well. So hopefully a good year to apply to university. Career aptitude tests, are there any that the college provides access to online?
The Prospects website, www.prospects.ac.uk, have what's called a career planner and a career matching program. We don't actually offer, we don't buy in psychometric tests like Moresby, for example, but students can do sort of skills interests and to check out sort of their motivations, their skills and their aptitudes through the Prospects website. There's also a personality test called the Buzz quiz that they could use. And there's also another one called the SACU Student Career Quiz. So they're not what I would say in-depth psychometric tests, but they can help students to identify their skills and their interests and then actually suggest job areas that they might be suited to. And the Buzz quiz is really about their type of personality. So that might help to sort of point them in the right direction.
I'll also add in that there's one on Unifrog, so our careers platform that we have. So students can log in and do a test on Unifrog. And I mean, what they could do is the student could log in on a computer with yourself. So if you wanted to sort of sit and see what the results are, you can obviously do that at home. They don't have to be at college to access Unifrog.
Thank you. Question about the career sessions. Are students taken through a career session, or do they have to request time? So it depends what we're referring to there. If that's a reference to the tutorials, then I hope that question has sort of been answered earlier, that they have 2 sessions, or will, when we come back in August, have 2 sessions a week, and that equates to about 2.5 hours of time. If what's being referred to there are careers interviews, then all students are invited to make contact with Liz and with Rachel. There's a very easy way to book an appointment with them, and they'll give time. In fact, the bulk of their time is spent talking to students individually, giving careers advice. So if students want a careers interview, they simply go to reception and request an appointment with one of these 2 excellent careers advisors. A technical question here about the impact of household income on the means testing for the maintenance grant. So can you see the question there, Rachel and Liz?
Yes, we can. No, size of household isn't taken into account. It is done on your household income. So it's whatever comes into the household, basically.
Okay. I mean, as I say, we do plan to put some more detail out very early in the new academic year, and potentially hold a session specifically on student finance. That's certainly our intention. Whether we do it like this, or who knows, maybe in person by then, I don't know. But we're aware that you'll be very interested in that aspect of the process, as I am as a parent, and we will make sure that you get some information to sort of flesh that out. What happens if a student doesn't receive any offers from the Ucas application? Actually, very, very rare. We do have a very high success rate. Again, we get analysis on this sort of thing, and our students actually are significantly more likely than the average to get offers. However, depending on whether the student pitches their application, it can be competitive, there can be disappointment. There's a clear answer to this question, I think, isn't there? But do you want to take that, Liz?
Yeah, no, that's fine. If students actually don't get any offers from their application, or they've changed their mind, they can, first of all, if they don't get any offers, what they can do, they can enter a service called Extra, and that opens from January through until the end of June. And that means that they can add 1 course at a time. And then if they get an offer from that university, then that's the university they're going to go to. If they change their mind or don't get an offer from that university, then they can actually pick another one. We do have some students who change their mind about where they want to go to. So again, if they decline their offers, they can actually enter Extra. So on the Ucas website, there will be a link to how Extra works. If students didn't get an offer because they haven't got into medicine, or they haven't got into nursing, or a vocational course that's required an interview, then we would review things with students and perhaps suggest that if it's really what they want to do, they have a year out to get some more relevant experience and reapply again the following year if it's a particular course that they want to actually get into.
Okay, so I'm just trying to type a couple of quick answers. Sorry for the brevity to some questions. We've got a lot more questions, I'm afraid, than we can answer in the time. Unis over the summer, mostly virtual, but I think some universities are, as Liz mentioned, are opening up. Deadline for applications, 29th of November, that's our internal deadline. That's what we recommend that students meet that deadline in order to give us time to process for the external deadline, but we can take them after that. That's the deadline for the full application, but you can apply, I think I'm right, Liz and Rachel, you can apply for one university and then add in others later if you wish to do so.
And can I just add, Meirion, on that question, it said something about the deadline was, is this for their first choice and backup choices or just first choice? No, that's the deadline for applications to actually get sent off to Ucas. So they apply to they're able to apply to 5 universities. They wait to see if they get their offers back. And when they've had all of their offers, that is when they make their first and second choice, firm and insurance choice. So that doesn't happen until much later on.
Can students apply for just one university? The answer is yes. You can apply for 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. 5 being the maximum in any one application cycle. I think that's right. Okay, I'm conscious of the time. I did promise we would finish at 7:32. I'm sorry that I didn't get through everybody's questions, and hopefully, therefore, those contact details will be useful to you. So if you haven't made a note of them, as I say, please do go back, watch the end of the presentation, and you should see those contact details. You're very welcome to email me, because there were quite a few questions there, which, as I say, we couldn't get to, including one about where I got my shirt. I don't buy my own shirts, actually, so I don't know. But there we are. So thanks ever so much for joining in with this. Thanks for your time. As I say, we'll keep in touch. Careers newsletters go out to parents each term or half term, and we'll be sending something out in the new year, including, as I keep saying, some more detailed information on student finance. But in the meantime, thank you very much indeed. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and thanks for your support.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.